Welcome to the Nature Garden podcast with me, Carl Steinson, and the Weekending Show team from Lionheart Radio. It's a chance to take a wander down the garden path and country lane with the birds and the bees and the flowers and trees, and it's an opportunity to hear stories from the past and present. In this episode, everything's looking peachy in the garden with the promise of fragrance to come, and Tom Pattinson's on a tomato-flavoured journey of discovery. Oh, tiptoe from the garden, by the garden of the willow tree, and take care when you're tiptoeing through the tulips, folks. Join John and Dean for more cautionary tales from the Alnwick Poison Garden. And Tom Cadwallender's fettling up, as we say, on Coquet Island in rather cold weather to help puffins and terns. And there's news of a very rare avian visitor. Plus some top tips for the garden from Tom P. All coming up on the Nature Garden podcast. Tom Pattinson's doing some proper work this week, grafting and checking the grapevines and peaches, and enjoying the good life in the greenhouse.
Well, I'm standing in the home greenhouse. It's a timber structure, red cedar, Alton, 24 feet long and 10 foot wide. I have one or two permanent plantings in here. Some of them are transient. They're plants that will go outside eventually once they've toughened up a wee bit. But for the moment, there's still a risk of frost outside. It's early May, and until the end of May can be frost. So gradually I'm weaning them in here, hardening them off, ready to go outside eventually. Some of them will stay in here as a crop. For example, the tomatoes. I love the peach tree at the end. We have a little section at the end of this greenhouse, which sectioned off, which is a potting shed come place for the one or two other tomatoes, say, and also. But the main thing in there is the peach. It's a lovely tree. It's been in about 8 years now. It's a peregrine peach, self-fertile, and we get a good crop every year. You know, the temperature in here during the winter, it's unheated. It's simply solar heating that warms it up now. But in winter, it gets down to -2, -3, -4. But still, this peach survives, as do the two grapevines which are hung overhead. I am just reaching the stage with the peach. I help pollinate it, even though it's self-fertile. I love to lend a helping hand with a little brush. Earlier, when they flowered about the end of February, early March, the beautiful pink flowers on it, very decorative. But now we have a host of peaches about the size of a plum, and it's time to thin them out, sadly. If I leave them all in there, mid-July to the end of July, when they generally ripen, I'll have a lot of them about the size of golf balls. That's no good. So I have to thin them out, be strong-willed, and I'll get them up to the size of tennis balls. But they're ready for mid to late July. And you can tell when they're ripe because you walk into the greenhouse in the morning and, wow, that fragrance they emit is gorgeous. Pick me now, they say. I'm looking at the grapevine overhead. Got main rods going overhead and along the length of the greenhouse. And they were pruned in winter. All the side shoots, laterals, pruned right back to the main rods. Just one bud. And it just looked like as if it were a prickly plant all the way along. Now, all those side shoots have burst into bloom. And I look at them, I'm looking one above my head now, and I count the leaves from the base, from the main rod. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leaves. Now between the second one and the sixth one, if that side shoot is going to produce fruit at all, it will show there. If it goes to 6 or beyond and there's no fruit, miniature fruit bunches, then simply take it right back to 2 buds. Don't waste growth, energy in growth, unless that shoot has some grapes. I'm looking at it and wow, we have a big crop again this year. And I have quite a big job in hand over the next few days, pinching out after the sixth shoot to let all of the energy go into those little clusters of flowers and then bunches of grapes. The other thing I grow in here during summer is the tomato. I've got a bit of a collection. I like to have a collection. Some of them are grafted, and the grafted plants are always best because they have that strength about them and vigour, and they keep on cropping, and they're much better croppers than those I've raised from seed. So I've got Shirley, which has short joints between the trusses of tomatoes, which is good. Alicante is there. Sun gold, of course, for a bit of colour, and those little sweet cherry type sun gold. And there's one called Aviditas, Aviditas, where 3 of them are grafted, and they gave me masses of tomatoes last year. Going along a wee bit further, I've come up to the propagating box which I have. It's about 1 metre square, and I bring young plants on in it, seeds, cuttings, etc. At the moment, I've got some really interesting plants in here, and they're tomatoes too, and they're grafted. There are 8 of them. There isn't a single varietal or cultivar name amongst them that I recognise. I've never grown these ones before. So that's my little journey of discovery this year.
Now, being the cuddly sort of chap that he is, Tom Cadwallender from the British Trust for Ornithologies helping the RSPB this week to check the habitat of Coquet Island to help seabirds like puffins to burrow and nest. And they're building a hide as well. Over to you, Tom.
The seabird breeding season is upon us, and we need to make sure that the sites are up and good fettle. And you know, you'll remember that I'm a long-term volunteer for the RSPB on Coquet Island, and I've been working on roseate terns since 1991, so I've been going out there quite a long time. So we have to make sure things are fettled up. So we went across on Monday afternoon, and I don't know if you remember Monday afternoon, bank holiday. It was absolutely freezing. There was a northerly wind creating a bit of chop, and we had to go across in the RSPB rib. But we all had our waterproof kit on. We were heavy duty gear, heavy duty waterproofs and the life-saving gear as well. So they will inflate you and that sort of thing. So we were kind of well kitted. But by goodness me, it was cold. But anyway, we got on the island and we had to do some fettling up. Other volunteers had been working away, and they'd been making sure that the nest sites for roseate terns were sorted, putting the nest boxes out and creating the kind of shingle scrapes for them. So they're all very, very welcome there, so it's all sorted out. And our little task for the afternoon was to erect a hide for the wardens to use to monitor the colony of roseate terns, and that's sort of situated on the jetty, which is on the west side of the island, the side of the island you can see from mainland. Coquet Island is just offshore from Amble, about a mile offshore. So it takes us about 20 minutes to get there in the inflatable in the rib. But anyway, on the island, goodness me, it was so cold. Oh, goodness me, it was cold. So once we got our job done, we had a chance to wander around and have a bit of quick survey of what was going on there. And some of the black-headed gulls were already on eggs, which is quite something. And a lot of the puffins, there's must be thousands and thousands of puffins on the sea. And as we were crossing from mainland in the Rib, the puffins are still on the water, and they were just parked to let us by, and it's amazing. And what's happening is they're kind of gathering around the island. So there's about 20,000 birds will be breeding on puffins breeding on Coquet Island, but they haven't got enough courage yet to get onto the plateau, the flat bit of the island where they'll breed, and they'll dig their burrows, or in fact just occupy old burrows and fettle them up. But they're still kind of plucking up courage to get on there. So they're occasionally flattening off the sea onto the plateau and back again and all that sort of stuff. But they're in the best plumage, these puffins, and it's great actually. You can get really close to them because they're so confiding at this point in time, and they have one thing in their mind: they want to breed. But they haven't got enough courage to get into the nest site just yet. But they will over the next couple of days. I think the weather's held them back a little. So yes, we saw lots of puffins. And interestingly, last year, for the first time, we had successful breeding of razorbills. 2 pairs raised a chick each, which was quite something. The year before, they did attempt, but they failed. Young birds, I suspect, but this year there's 6 birds sitting waiting to get down and do some egg laying. So that's really something. That's quite amazing actually. That razorbills will breed on Coquet, are breeding on Coquet. They have been around the place, but they just haven't bothered to breed previously. But we do get large numbers of guillemots. Now guillemots breed in 60,000 pairs or something on the Farne Islands. But we never get them breeding on Coquet. What we reckon is that the cliffs, the guillemots like to be on top of cliffs, quite high cliffs, and the cliffs on Coquet aren't big enough, aren't high enough. So yes, they'll never breed there. But the razorbills breed on lower down the cliffs, so actually Coquet Island it could be ideal for them once they've started colonising. It's great. So it's amazing. So yes, in amongst all the other things, and we've got new birds breeding all the time. So we checked out the black-headed gulls, and we found that there was a pair of Mediterranean gulls. Mediterranean gulls are very similar to black-headed gulls. Black-headed gulls are not really black-headed. They've got brown heads, whereas the Mediterranean gulls have got black heads, and they've got sort of very, very white wings compared to the black-headed gulls. And these are rare breeding birds as well, so there's only a couple of pairs. So they're in. And sandwich terns are in quite good numbers. Common terns are in a few, and Arctic terns are in. And I found the first roseate tern of the season on the beach on Coquet. And it was quite something that. And you could see it was in fabulous plumage, I have to tell you. It had this pink blush, and it just stood out from all of the other kind of almost dull-looking terns. It stood out really something, and it sort of gives me a great buzz to think that they're coming. And I heard today that they're back on the scrapes and actually prospecting the nest boxes, which is absolutely wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So yes, it's all happening. Whilst we've got these summer birds coming in, there are still purple sandpipers on the east shore. There was 85 purple sandpipers. Now these wading birds are coming down from the very high Arctic, from Spitsbergen, for example, to winter with our bit of coastline. But they're still here. Here we are in May, and they haven't made the journey back north yet. Some waders have gone, but these ones haven't. So we're seeing this interesting juxtaposition of wintering birds and breeding birds coming in. That sort of overlap, that Venn diagram, if you like. And one of the big issues that's going to come up in this year is bird flu. And whilst we've not seen any evidence, and we didn't see any evidence on Monday on Coquet Island of bird flu, and it's just fingers crossed because it's going to be devastating. We had an awful year last year. But I now know that the Farne Islands are not allowing any landing. There's no landing on Coquet anyway because of the density of breeding seabirds. But the Farne Islands have closed for visitors. But actually, for me, that's there's still a good experience to be had on fawns. The National Trust have made that decision that they will not allow landing. But I think just going out on a boat trip And you get some great views of birds actually just going out in the boats, and that's worthwhile in itself. Just doing that, really quite close. And you can do the same on Coquet, of course. Puffin cruises sail out of Amble when the weather's right. Then they'll take you on a trip right round Coquet, and you can get quite close in as well. And you get a chance to see rosy terns, which are the rarest breeding seabird that we have in the UK, and we've got them in Northumberland. It's just quite something that, the fact that we have this rarest breeding seabird just on our doorsteps here in Northumberland. Last year we got just over 150 pairs. Who knows what's going to happen this year? Who knows what the impact of bird flu is from last year, So we're bated breath, fingers crossed, all those sort of things, just waiting for the season to kick off properly. But anyway, that was an interesting sort of bank holiday for me. Just it's getting so exciting. But seabirds are just absolutely wonderful, and how they the tough characters, just amazing characters, all these seabirds, different types of seabirds. Anyway, folks, that was one hell of a bank holiday Monday.
Tom's checking out a few new types of tomatoes and some lettuce this week. And he's also using an egg cup to encourage, what can sometimes be a very difficult herb to grow. Here's Tom to tell us more.
Hello again. Let me share with you the names of 8 tomato varieties I'm trying for the first time. This is what I think gardening is all about, with no matter what you're growing, fruit, vegetables, ornamental plants, trying something new, experiment. These 8 are Gourmand Sun, Cocktail Crush, Shimmer, Crimson Blush, Buffalo Sun, Sugar Gloss, Crimson Plum and Crimson Crush. 8 varieties to think about. Whether you've grown them or not before, I don't know, but this is the first for me with them. I also have other edible plants in the greenhouse, ready to go outside. We've just been planting 1 or 2 out of the tougher types. Parsley, moss curled. Sow it now, and it lasts for the whole year, way through the winter, until next year when you sow the next batch. Quite amazing. Always tender to taste as well on the plate. This moss curled can be a bit difficult if you sow it outside in a drill. It depends on the weather, but generally speaking, it can take 5 to 6 weeks to germinate. The story is that it goes down to talk to the devil, gets fed up with his company or her company after so long, and decides to come to the surface. I can cut that time down very quickly, easily, by boiling a kettle, having an egg cup nearby, putting some of the water after it's boiled, just going off the boil, into that egg cup, opening a packet of moss curled parsley and pouring the contents into the water. Leave it in the egg cup overnight. Next morning, get a plant label, get your tray ready, preferably a cell tray, and get a few of the seeds on the end of the label and spread them across each cell. Cover them lightly with something like perlite or vermiculite, better still, and put them into a warm place, keep them moist, and within 2 weeks, sometimes 10 days, they germinate. I transfer the plugs when they've got a few little roots on them into small pots, grow them on from there, and the result, after about something like the 6 weeks that it took for them to germinate outside, they're ready to go out with little plugs on them and plant them. I have some of those here. I also have a crop of lettuce. This has been growing at leaf lettuce. I don't use heart lettuce. I use the leaf lettuce. It's cut and come again basis. Brilliant. The more you cut, the more it produces. And it's just salad bowl. Salad bowl and Lollo Rosso. Those two, the green-leaved and the red-leaved. I sow them in October into the greenhouse border, and they germinate and grow on, and over winter we pick the leaves from micro leaves to large leaves, and we're still picking them now. Even now, whilst I'm putting my first little plugs of lettuce under a cloche outdoor in the garden, in the open garden. This year I've tried a new variety. To me, again, it's about experimentation, trying something new. This one is a red and green leaved lettuce. It's the salad bowl lettuce, but it's a mixture of red and green. Red tinged tips and green beneath. It looks gorgeous in the seedling stage. Can't wait to try that. I've got the last lot of runner beans here. They're a bit fussy about the weather, the wind and the frost, of course. So I've made a wigwam outside, 2 wigwams exactly, actually, in cane. I get 9 canes, garden canes, take up about a square metre of soil, of garden, and spread them out over that in a circle over that square metre and tie them together at the top. And they just love the plants growing up those. I plant them on the inside of the circle next to a cane, and to start them off, if it's really windy, I weave some of the netting that I use to protect the strawberries from the blackbirds. Just weave that round until it gets a bit calm and they're hardened off. They're out in the garden at the moment. I've got some spares in the greenhouse, which will have to go out shortly. So that's what's happening in the greenhouse at the moment. I wouldn't like to begin to explain how many half-hardy bedding plants we have here, and in pots, growing on in pots, etc., for display. But one of them I'd like to mention, and that's a little sunflower. It's in the cell tray, and it's called Little Dorrit. It is multi-flowering. Each plant has quite a number of flowers on it. It grows about 1 metre tall, and it is a beauty. Really look forward to that flowering.
And tiptoe through the tulips with me. Yes, we've just been listening to that wonderful classic, but hang on. Tulips may be lovely, but do heed the warning words of John Knox and Dean Smith from the Alnwick Poison Garden.
Hello everybody, my name's Dean, and I'm here with my colleague John. We're both guides at the Alnwick Poison Garden, and we take our guests around and we teach them all about the dangers of the plants that may either feature in their garden or that can be found growing wild in the British countryside. If you interfere with these plants in the wrong way, then they can defend themselves quite viciously.
Today we're going to talk about tulips.
So tulips are spring bulb, and the question many people have is, are they poisonous? Tulips are in fact both poisonous to humans and animals in several ways. The toxins are tuliposide, which is converted by the body during digestion to tulipalin.
Externally, this causes skin irritation or redness. In larger doses, it will also cause inflammation, known as tulip bulb dermatitis, tulip finger, or tulip nail. Internally, it causes an effect on the digestion, stomach cramps, vomiting, and even respiratory failure. There is no data on what constitutes a critical dose. It will probably depend on the individual. Towards the end of World War II, the population of Holland, especially towards the Arnhem area, was suffering an horrific famine that led people to eat tulip bulbs as their only source of food. Because the bulbs hadn't been planted during the war, there were quite a surplus that had been left, and they dried out. This made them somewhat edible after they were lightly cooked. In the winter of 1944, going into 1945, the Allies had lost the Battle of Arnhem. This left the Dutch population in that region cut off, and many were facing a terrible famine. To make things worse, it was a pretty severe winter too. The population had resorted to eating tulip bulbs. They were being sold at newsagents and grocers Because they'd been dried, a lot of the poison had disappeared. Then cooking them made them more edible.
Audrey Hepburn was the daughter of a Dutch baroness and an English father. She struggled to survive in Holland during the war under occupation. By the end of the war, she was very close to death. She survived by eating nettles, tulip bulbs, and drinking water to fill her stomach. At the end of the war, she was 5'6" and weighed only 88 pounds. And suffering from edema, and the rest of her life, she continued to suffer with anemia, possibly as a consequence. She was the same age as Anne Frank, but did say later she was the girl that made it, whereas Anne Frank didn't.
Now, Northumberland, the last time I looked, is a long way from China, even by plane. And a rare avian visitor has got Tom Cadwallender and a lot of enthusiastic bird watchers very excited. A muckle Northumbrian welcome to the grey-headed lapwing.
What a fantastic bank holiday May the 1st was. It was amazing. From an ornithological point of view, that is, I'll start at the very beginning. It's all about rare birds. I was out for a walk normal walk on Monday morning, as you do. I got a message through from a pal saying that this grey-headed lapwing had just been seen. He'd just found it, actually, at Low Newton, at the new scrapes there. And I thought to myself, what? Grey-headed lapwing? I've seen grey-headed lapwing abroad, Thailand, in fact, one winter, a number of years ago. And I knew it was an incredibly kind of rare bird, and bird from an awful long way away, 7,000 miles. So when he said grey-headed lapwing, I thought, crikey, is he having a joke? And I'm going to laugh, but actually it wasn't. It was true. He sent me a photograph. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, the news got out, and within an hour, in fact, I was out from a walk down Alnwick, and I had to phone Muriel to say, can you come pick me up, please, quick, because these birds birds do fly, and they can fly away. So I had to get up there sharp just in case. But anyway, yes, off we went, and I was there within an hour seeing this bird, and it's this grey-headed lapwing, and it's a relative of our lapwing, which is known as the northern lapwing. There are southern lapwings in South America, Andean lapwings, all manner of plovers and lapwings, and they're all kind of linked together, and they're all part of this big family. So the same sort of body size as our lapwing, but without the kind of the crest. And it looks really quite an amazing bird. And as the name suggests, it has got this grey head. And the grey head spreads right down to the upper breast. And the lower breast, through the belly, is white. And it has a grey back. But the bill is a bright yellow with a black tip to it. And it's got yellow legs. So actually it stands out really, really well. And as I say, it's the size of our lapwing. And it's about so that makes it about sort of 7 or 8 inches high. And this bird had flown 7,000 miles, just turned up out of nowhere. Anyway, this bird turns out to be the first record for Britain of this species. And it's only the 4th time that this species has ever turned up in Greater Europe, which is quite phenomenal. So it's quite an amazing thing. The species itself, when it winters in through Thailand into northern India, and at this time of year, it should be settling into its breeding grounds in China and northern China and northern Japan. So that's where they like to be. So it's an awful long way from home. But the interesting thing is, people ask, so why, how these birds turn up? What happens? Well, actually, there's a number of reasons. This species, this grey-headed lapwing, is actually spreading its range. It's quite a successful species, so it's actually pushing the boundaries. So the young ones tend to move and sort of fly out of their normal breeding range, so they're pushing the boundaries, if you like. If a bird is under pressure, a bird species is under pressure in population, the population will contract to the kind of the core area, whereas the opposite is the fact when the population is quite buoyant, which it is with this grey-headed lapwing, and so they're pushing the boundaries. So this bird will have been kind of moving out of the area. When it's thinking about heading back to breed, it'll think about sort of spreading its wings, if you like. Then it will have been called by easterly winds, and the last 2 or 3 weeks we've had sort of quite a big blow from the east. It's been quite consistent, and the easterly winds have come from quite a long way. So yes, it'll have been pushed and pushed and pushed to the western extremes of continental Europe. And of course, Britain is the most westerly point in northern Europe, and birds will just drop in here. So we do find a lot of rare birds turning up in Northumberland. It's quite incredible. But this one turning up at Low Newton, and there's some new scrapes there, which I mentioned earlier. These scrapes have been created by the bird's finder by all accounts. And Gary Woodburn, who's who found the bird, had been working with a local farmer over a number of years, creating scrapes and making a perfect habitat for wading birds and some duck species as well. So he's created this wonderful kind of environment, and he's found some really good birds there. And we have avocets now. If you're interested in wading birds, which you should be, I think you should be, because for me, wading birds are just the best thing ever. And there's one species which is colonising right through Britain, and it's now in Northumberland, and its most northerly breeding point in the UK is at Low Newton, and that's the avocet, the logo of the RSPB. Black and white with an upturned bill. That's absolutely brilliant. So they're there. If you want to go and have a look, please do. And it's just behind Low Newton village. And if you walk past the ship and down towards the path down behind the dunes, you'll see the pond there, the scrapes there. Great, and it's adjacent to the National Trust Nature Reserve there with the pool, so you're actually assured of really quite a good day. But Gary's done an amazing job by creating this habitat, and the fact that he found this and he knew what it was, which is quite phenomenal. So yes, grey-headed lapwing. It's been across the national news. It's across everything, and the people and bird watchers have come from miles around, from hundreds of miles around. And I know people who've come up from Dorset, who've come from Wales, who've travelled down from northern Scotland, and they've travelled from all over the place. When we got there an hour after it had been found, there was 50 or 60 people there. And within that afternoon, there was 100, 200 people. And the next day, when people had a chance to get transport sorted out, there was must have been sort of near enough 1,000 people had been through to see this bird. It caused an awful lot of excitement, I can tell you. And it's still there today, which I'm making this recording on on Thursday, the 4th of May, and the bird is still around. So it turned up on the 1st of May, so it's still around on the 4th. Just a little bit north of Newton Links Farm, on the way to Long Nanny. It's absolutely wonderful. It's great stuff. Anyway, what a great bit of excitement that was. Oh, birds are brilliant, Great stuff. Thanks a lot, folks.
And to the sound of War Blackbird, here's Tom with some things to be getting on with in the garden.
So, it's jobs for the week time. And I'm looking out at the raised beds with herbs in, and they're sprouting away. They're looking good at the moment. So we've just gone over it recently, and Judy, my wife, has been taking out the weeds, etc., and refreshing it. And you don't even have to raise them from seed yourself, the herbs. Quite a few of them here are perennial, which is good. Just chop them down and they come again each year. Things like the allium, for example, which we couldn't be without the chives, that is. It's just going to start flowering now, but we allow some to flower, some of the stems, for the pollinators, like the bees. They love it. but the rest of them, we use them in salads, in cooking, in fries, in all sorts of ways. It's one of the most popular, chives is one of the most popular plants in this garden for gathering for meals. And they're divided up, just recently been divided up, groups of bulbs, just pull them apart and plant them in groups, and they're into pots if you wish, and they just keep going. It's just an amazing plant. They're in there though at the moment, just coming on, and I'm looking round at the strawberry bed. I can see the flower spikes coming up on those. By the way, the strawberries that were grown in pots are just about to start ripening in the greenhouse over winter, lifted up in about January, February, put into large pots, about 10 of them. They're going to give us an early crop, but outdoors I see that the flower spikes are coming up on a few varieties I have there, and now's the time to get some straw or some strulch, whatever was your choice, and lay it so that if it rains later when the fruits are ripe, the soil won't be splashed up and get onto the fruits. And of course it does something to deter any things like slugs or snails getting at them. Not right time for netting them yet, but by goodness, they're coming along so fast in the sun, this afternoon sun, that we'll have to think about that shortly as well, the netting. Looking across to the raised vegetable beds we have, which are flagstones between them for easy access, I see that Judy, my wife, has been, I saw the potatoes were just starting to pop up above the surface last week, and that's a problem. I keep mentioning frost, but it's still a possibility throughout May, this part of North Northumberland in England. So she's been earthing up and covering those shoots that have appeared. This protects them against the frost, and of course, I'm sure you're well aware that you have to cover any of the developing tubers, because if the sun gets at them too long, daylight, they develop that green patches, which makes them poisonous. So, time to earth up those potatoes. Looking along the borders, they're coming along nicely. I'm still weeding certain patches, some perennial weeds, and the problem with perennial weeds is if you get them in the middle of, say, a mixed border right next to plants, it's just a no-no trying to think to yourself, I'll give them some sort of herbicide. I don't like to use that sort of thing in the garden anyway. So I'm afraid it's exercise time, even if it means donning the knee pads, which I do, and getting down real close to those weeds. And if it's things like ground elder, podagraria, then dig every little scrap of the roots out. They go down quite a distance, but don't leave the small piece, because the smallest piece will regenerate. That and the couch grass. That's another difficult one to get rid of, but you can do it, and it's done mechanically. I just started mowing the lawns, and last week, and they're now going to last a week. The growth is taking off so much in the garden at the moment that they're not even going to last the week. I've got to cut them again. That is something I'll do as soon as the rain stays away and it's dry, because you can make such a mess if you cut it when the lawn is wet. My main theme at the moment is to get more of these plants out, because from a greenhouse and plant them outside, I've got a great batch of probably 4 dozen corn on the cob, sweet corn, and it needs to go out. But don't forget, you plant those in a block, and I've got the block ready for them. It's just about maybe 1.5 meters square, the block. But you put them together, fairly close together, even a little bit closer than 30, say maybe 20 to 25 centimetres. That's the way I do it anyway, because they're wind pollinated, and that way they pollinate one another. And I'm looking forward to them. They're small plants at the moment, 10 centimetres tall, maybe 15, some of them. I'm looking forward to mid-August, when there's lovely cobs, 2 to a plant, all ready to lightly cook and put a knob of butter on. My goodness, that's good. Look, whatever you're doing next week, enjoy your gardening.
You've been listening to gardener Tom Pattinson, birder Tom Cadwallender from the British Trust for Ornithology, and John Knox and Dean Smith from the Alnwick Poison Garden. I'm Carl Steinson, and don't forget you can listen back to all the previous reports we've done on the Nature Garden podcast. Enjoy your gardening and time outdoors with nature. Bye for now.